I'm going to ask you the question that I asked DeRoy. You're watching these pictures. You followed this for the past 3 days. What do you make of this? Where do you think it's going?
Well, listen, it's horrific, and it starts with a horrific act of police brutality. Anytime you have a police officer involved shooting, the media often goes into a frenzy, and there's an immediate demonization and attack of the police officers. And I think that's wrong. I think it's premature. That being said, in this instance, we have a video of the incident, and we can see with Mr. Floyd, the officer, with his knee on his neck for 8 minutes. Mr. Floyd is handcuffed. He's clearly incapacitated. He's begging for his life. And what we saw was wrong. There's no legitimate law enforcement purpose for what we saw right there.
I'm sorry, Senator. Let me stop right there and just ask a question. And I agree with you. I found the video very upsetting. And there's a lot of abuse of power by a lot of different people in charge, including the police sometimes. Yep. Do you believe, since let's just deal with facts here, do you believe that the man in custody died of suffocation because the police officer was sitting on him?
I don't know. We'll have to see what the medical evidence shows. But hold on.
Isn't that the question? I mean, either the cop killed him or he didn't. I mean, no.
The question is, was that abuse of authority and police brutality?
It was definitely an abuse of authority, but the guy's been charged with murder. So isn't the question whether he killed him or not?
Well, there are two separate questions. Number one, the Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation. That was the right thing to do. I applauded the Department of Justice for doing that. Number two, the prosecutor chose today to bring homicide charges. Now, to prove that, they will have to prove that the evidence supports it. I don't know what the medical examiner is going to determine on that. So whether or not it was homicide will depend on the evidence, but it was clearly police brutality. And it was not conduct we expect of any officer. An officer is entitled to defend himself.
I totally agree with that. I think it was awful. I've seen that I covered cops. I've seen that kind of thing before, and I hate it. However, the country is convulsing on the basis of the idea that a cop killed this man who was restrained. He was in handcuffs. And I think it's a meaningful question. It's not something we could have lied over and be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Why wouldn't it matter?
Tucker, saying that the criminal justice system will operate and it will depend upon what the evidence is and whether the case can be proven to the jury is not alighting over it. It's saying
no, it's not. And I agree with you 100% there.
And one of the reasons, sadly, that we are seeing this violence and this rioting is that you have a lot of demagogues that want to use this incident of clear abuse by one police officer, and they want to use it to paint every police officer is corrupt and racist. And most police officers heroically risk their lives to protect the communities they're in, often minority communities. And for everyone that is stirring up racial division and engaging in violence and looting, that is completely unacceptable. Violence and criminal conduct is unacceptable, whether it is committed by a mob in rage or whether it's committed by a police officer who's breaking the law. The law should apply fairly and uniformly to everyone.
So why is that so difficult for so many Republicans in Washington to say? I saw the tape. I was horrified by it. The guy should be punished for doing this. And you're not allowed to burn our cities down. And yet I've heard basically silence from the party that I've kind of routinely voted for all these years, rethinking that now. But why doesn't anybody stand up for the rest of us, civilization? Like, you're not allowed to burn cars. How's that? You're saying it. Good for you.
I can't speak for others, but it's an obvious reaction. Enforce the law, protect people's lives, protect people's rights. And I'll point out, there is some irony that in Minneapolis, the local officials, the state officials, the attorney general, the governor, both senators, they're all Democrats. And you get a lot of people who are playing this for partisan advantage. And yet, one of the unfortunate things about a lot of elected Democrats, and we're seeing this during the coronavirus pandemic, is that they're willing to be authoritarians. They're willing to be statists. They're willing to send in people to arrest dads for playing softball with little girls or women paddle boarding. And it's, if you believe in liberty, then you want to see police officers keeping people safe and not abusing people's rights or liberties.
I couldn't agree more. And we've seen, we've seen a lot of abuse actually recently. Let me ask you just a question, and I don't know if it's answerable, but you've watched this country closely for a long time. Where do you think this is going?
Look, I think we've always had demagogues, and we've seen, you and I are both old enough to remember Rodney King and his plea, "Can't we just get along?" I would like to think that we can instead appeal to our better angels. I think there are an awful lot of people, whether black or white or Hispanic, that want to come together as one America, particularly at a time when we have both a public health crisis and a massive economic crisis. Dividing us and turning people against each other is not good or beneficial, as much as the media loves to do it.
I think that's what you just said is absolutely right. And how nice would it be if we had leaders who could bring us together? I mean, that'd be the greatest thing of all. Thank you, Senator. Good to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Tucker.